Anyway, so let's talk about inflation. So Turkey at 70%. News here in Australia is not so good. Most recent inflation number came in at 4%, up from 3.6. Now, you and I both sat down at the start of the year with all of these expectations on rate cut. That story is not playing out now, and the markets are certainly starting to actually pencil in a rate rise.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah, you would think so. Inflation is proving stickier than many people had thought. I think it's worth pointing out as well, though, unfortunately, some of the biggest contributors to inflation are like essential spending. And so the fear is that a rate rise or two is really not going to have the, immediate effect that it needs to have when you've got things like power or utilities, housing, essentially food,
all transport,
things that people have to spend money on. So really tricky situation here. And when you look at what's happened globally, where interest rates got to above 5% in the US and the UK, both of these countries are now much, much closer, if not already in the 2 to 3% inflation band that their central banks are aiming for. So,
but do you not hear the internal inconsistency in your argument?
Yeah. No, it's super tricky. But I think maybe it just needs to get so high that it just flattens it.
Well, yeah,
which is so difficult. But
I mean, this is the argument why interest rates aren't the only policy to fight inflation, and we need a fiscal response, not just a monetary response. The fiscal response being from the government.
Yeah.
Jim Chalmers' $300 energy supplement.
Yeah.
Probably not. It'll have a minor impact in the inflation rating after we get it, but it's not structural.
No. And we've also just, at time of recording, it is we've just ticked over financial new year. 13.2 million people, I think, have now just got tax cuts as well. So tricky environment. I think both New South Wales and federal budgets are also certainly expansionary in terms of spending. So yeah, I think there's this battle between government and RBA at the moment, and how they can do it. But just to close out inflation, the US is now 2.6%, down from 2.7%, and the UK hit their 2% as well. So they're now talking rate cuts, and here we are talking rate rises.
Yeah, well, isn't the whole conspiracy theory? Well, it's not a conspiracy, but isn't the whole thing that Joe Biden wants one interest rate cut before the election?
Yeah. Will he get it, mate? That's something you were back for, which was the US presidential debate. Let's not get into that.
Change him.
That was awful.
You can't run campaigns out of fear.
No.
You can't run campaigns out of fear of what the alternative might be. He is a net negative. Let the man retire with dignity.
Yes, move him on. Anyway, other headlines, Ren. Surely this made it all the way across to Turkey, and that is NVIDIA. It had one of the best runs. In fact, it took the number one spot as the world's most valuable company at one point. I think you were probably up in a hot air balloon at that point, with a $3.4 trillion market cap taking the crown from Microsoft and Apple. Subsequently, it did have its the worst 3-day stretch in stock market history, losing $500 billion, but since has steadied. Yes. So it's been a wild roller coaster, making headlines, as you would expect. And to close it out, Dutton's nuclear dream. He's gone public with wanting to put 7 nuclear power plants in Australia by 2050, all paid for by government.
How much?
Billions.
No, but how much?
I actually can't remember.
No, he doesn't know.
That's right. He had a one page.
It hasn't been cost. It would be costed before the next election. Is what I heard.
That's right. Yeah, and he had a 1-page diagram of what it would look like down in Lithgow.
The nuclear reactor.
Yeah, They got it made up. It looks quite nice.
Split the isotope.
So that's that made a lot of headlines, and as did Elon Musk. Shareholders approved. Or gave approval of his $56 billion pay package, but it doesn't actually mean anything because the court still needs to come in and overturn it.
Right.
Which I haven't actually kept up with that headline because it doesn't really mean much.
It's interesting, from a purely not talking about the Elon situation directly, but just talking about business operations and regulatory and legal overreach, the court shouldn't be able to tell a business what it can pay its employees.
It's America.
From a philosophical point of view.
Yeah.
Obviously, the $56 billion, the size of this pay package, obviously colours the debate around the pay package.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was obviously happy. There's a lot of memes going around with him dancing on stage when that news came through. I kind of sit on his side, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I think, look.
You are a big Elon guy.
No. Look, outside of him being an absolute turkey, I think that if you set the targets and you create hundreds of billions of dollars of shareholder value, then you can't just backtrack just because all of a sudden it seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with this whole debate. It's not a pay packet. It's not like you and I, well, we're a bad example because we run Equity Mates, but it's not like, when I worked at Coles, I would negotiate a pay rise with my boss. That's not, Elon didn't negotiate a $56 billion pay rise here. There were a set of incentives set for him by the board, which Tesla then absolutely blew past.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So time will tell if the court overturns that. I think that's now the next step for him.
Equity Mates. I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.